Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Alexander Williamson and James with the secret fever in your fish room.
I love it.
So how is everybody doing? It's so good to see everybody here. And I'm glad to have James here as well.
I'm glad to be here.
If you didn't know, he's got a channel. The links to his channel and his website are in the description. So if y'all want to check out any of his work, which is pretty cool stuff, and he's also a intelligent fish keeper. He approaches things from much the same way that I would say that I do as well. Analytical, scientific, and experiential, and but not so uptight or what's the word? Focused in that you're not a human, you're like a robot or something. You know, you can get too myopic. That's the word.
Absolutely.
And I don't get that sense from you. So, hey, Kenny, thank you so much, buddy. I see the super chat before we, or right as we fired up, or right before we fired up, but I really do appreciate it. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to say before we get this show on the roll is that okay, so we lined up for Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. this coming Tuesday, the 20th, the 21st, that we will be having a live necropsy, aka a fish autopsy, on how to diagnose what's wrong, why your fish died, where you should look, and what those sacks of goo and structures and, you know, things are inside that slimy fish body. You know, there's other slimy stuff within the slimy thing. And we'll go into what a healthy slimy liver looks like versus a fatty liver disease, or you know, a calcified kidney, or, you know, different things like that. So we'll be covering some of that. I don't know if we'll talk about a fish with a UTI. That would be kind of bizarre, but we'll be talking about whatever Dr. Mazerall wants to. He'll be leading it because I'm not what's the word? I don't have a license to practice fishicin, so I only play a doctor on TV. The other announcement before we get rolling is that Aquatic Arts now, everybody, they heard your collective griping, which I don't blame you. And there is no shipping now on their dry goods, dry food, their botanicals like catappa leaves or lotus pods, or fish foods and stuff like that. So no shipping costs to those, at least through the end of the year. If not, that might be a new thing with them. But I'm excited by that because their overnight rates are expensive, just because UPS's overnight rates are expensive. But that really is how you should ship fish, especially oddball or rarer fish that are of a high quality. You know, you probably want to ship them that way, not ground postage, especially in winter. So I just wanted to do that shout out and say also that the links to that gives a kickback to the channel, lets me get some store credit and stuff, and then buy cool new fish to show you guys. But that is all in the description down below, as well as links to PayPal and Venmo. I just thought I'd throw that out because if I ever say, hey, I'm doing this or that, and someone says, hey, I want this super chat to go towards you know, a donation towards so-and-so or this project or charity, YouTube takes a 40% cut, and then the government is supposed to take a 30% cut, 27% cut. So in the end, you guys can do the math. So just a heads up, you can give 40% more bang for your buck. I understand. I give super chats still too, so I get why. I get the appeal, and I get the socializing and all that with it. But I just thought I'd throw that out there, especially for other channels. If you're trying to support someone like with a nonprofit or whatnot, definitely look for their either like Venmo or PayPal, or God forbid, their nonprofit. So like the Amazon Research Center for Ornamental Fish, who Anthony Mazerol, the lovely gentleman who I interviewed a few weeks ago, who runs that place and set up that place. He'll be doing the fish necropsy, and it would be very nice if you gained something from that. If you wanted to toss a couple bucks, I think he's got paid like tab on their website. So I'm just saying all that. All right, now that all that mumbo jumbo and sales pitch finagling is out of the way, so James, let's hear a little bit about you, and then we'll get into interacting with the people. We'll give the people what they want. We'll answer any questions that folks have. ADHD, thank you so much. Merry Christmas. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you, my dear. You are too kind. Let me get the chat up on my other device here so that I can actually see all the comments rather than the ones that StreamYard decides that we should see. But James, right, where did you begin with this hobby? First of all, like, are you new? Are you old? What are you into? Those kind of things.
So I've been, well, I just got back into the hobby several years ago. I took some time off. I found that having kids in aquariums just wasn't mixing at the time with little ones. So I took some time off, but I found that there was something really missing in my life, and it was aquariums. I found myself spending more and more time at the local fish store, even though I didn't have tanks. And then I got back into it, and I got very deep back into it. But aquatic life has always been a huge part of who I am. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, on the ocean.
Oh, okay.
I spent the first year and a half of my life on a shrimp boat, though I don't even remember it because that was the house. There was no house. And it's just kind of, you know, grew up playing with marine life. And my father, even though I really don't remember it, he had a lot of fish tanks and had a fish store of sorts, kind of his own fish room set up. So it's just kind of always been ingrained in me, and the times that I've been without it as a part of my life, it's always left a void. So that brought me back into the hobby, which thankfully brought me into a lot of other people's lives just here locally, just, you know, coincidentally meeting people that were fish keepers.
And what's local for you?
So I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
It was actually the moment that I realized that I had something to give in terms of the hobby. I was in retail management, and I was talking to a customer about water, and they mentioned it was for an aquarium. So we got into an aquarium conversation, and very long story short, it ended up the two customers behind him were also into fish keeping or had been previously in their life. And so four of us stand there talking about fish keeping. And the gentleman that was buying the water kept coming back in. He was a fairly regular customer anyways, but he would come in and ask for help with his fish. He'd, you know, come in and present a problem, and I'd give him some ideas and recommendations. And that was when I realized that I could help people. I just kind of needed a good outlet to do that. I just didn't want to give my phone number out to everybody, you know, which is where the YouTube kind of started off. And I've been very blessed to be able to help a lot of people and, you know, kind of grow on YouTube, if you will, to where I can touch more lives. But even more importantly, you know, the community that we have is so amazing. They've impacted me in ways I never thought would imagine. So it's a very reciprocal relationship with the hobby and with the fish community.
For sure. Yeah, no, I've felt very much the same way, you know. I have to say too that I've really noticed that the lockdown and all that, I mean, it flipped everything on its head, from me being able to make a lot more money with nano fish, honestly, just bread and butter type fish that were out of stock for a while, kind of led to a lot of other people also being like, well, I could breed X, Y, or Z at least, and like, or I can't find this, so I need to talk to other local people. And then so many people had some time at home or were working from home that a lot of channels fired up, and people had more time to interact on channels. And I feel like the last 2 years really was this kind of renaissance that I'm really curious to see if it keeps burning as bright, you know, or if people will kind of go back to work at some point. But at the same time, like, that's Florida and some other places like never really skipped a beat. Whereas like Seattle, like, you have to show your ID, you know, when you walk into a restaurant, and, you know, they're still closing things down from time to time and stuff. So I guess it's different wherever you're at.
Absolutely. And that is one thing that kind of helped me on my path, if you will, on my journey. You know, I was in retail management when the lockdown and everything came into place. And it was absolutely horrible. I mean, it got to the point we were having to put up barricades and put somebody on guard when we were unloading trucks, just so people weren't running up and trying to steal toilet paper off the back of them.
Yeah.
Humanity really showed itself. I've never been cussed out so many times over toilet paper in my life as when the lockdown kind of implemented. So
yeah. So what do you do for a living then, or what were you doing then at that time?
So I was a retail store manager and regional training manager at the time. I'd been with that company for about 7 years.
Okay, and so you were in the thick of it.
Yeah, I didn't really have the passion for it at that point, and I'd already started the YouTube channel. I started my channel in September of 2019, and was blessed that things had gone well enough that I said, okay, I can kind of bite the bullet and kind of pull back my standard of living, if you will, the good old rice and beans, and I can get away from this toxic environment and focus more on aquatics and the fish fam and the community and doing these things. So I've been very blessed in that aspect. You know, there are times that I do miss the money because it was decent money, but that's more so for I guess you could say, you know, having kids and them going from, yeah, that's fine, you can have it, it doesn't matter, to, well, let's look at things and you know, plan for that. But it's given me the opportunity to spend time with my children, and that's a big thing. I was on call essentially. I didn't have, you know, it was one of those, if we went a couple hours away up to Gatlinburg, which is a big tourist thing here, and I got a phone call that there wasn't going to be somebody showing up that night, I would have to pack up the kids and go home, and I'd have to go into work.
Now, how many kids do you have?
I've got 2 little boys.
Okay, awesome. So, and how old?
8 and 10.
That's good. I mean, that's a handful, but it's a fun age too.
It is. Like, it's a wonderful age, and one of them is very much into the hobby.
Oh, cool.
Back before the whole Copacabana thing hit with the
Copacabana.
The Copacabana with the children's online stuff. There was actually a video where
I was thinking Cope.
Oh yeah, no. Kaler's Aquatics come over with Chattanooga Ed, and my youngest one, he actually toured them around, and it was on the YouTube video on Bob's channel on Kaler's, and he toured them around. He pointed out the different fish and all this stuff. He gave him a really nice fish room tour, which I thought was just fantastic. And
yeah,
he absolutely loved doing it. But that's not available for viewing anymore. But I really enjoyed being able to see that.
I understand not wanting your kid online too. Like that could be kind of funky.
I don't mind it. His big goal is to have his own channel, and then one day take over my channel. He's like, when you die, I'm gonna be Shroom Fever, right? So I'm like, yeah, you know, we can make that happen.
You're like, well, let's not resort to death yet. I mean,
yeah,
we can share in this empire.
Yeah,
He's like plotting ways to dethrone, you know.
Yeah. Oh, he's. Wouldn't surprise me.
So. All right. So tonight, you know, I figured that one of the things that I've always liked about you, I mean, is that you are really plugged into what's going on in the fish fam online. I mean, schedules, who's streaming. I mean, I don't even know who has a channel you know, a lot of the times. I'm just not, I'll just be blunt and just say that, you know, I spend a lot of time reading and not watching FishTube anymore. I mean, I have friends here, and I like chatting, and I like kind of catching up with people and everything. And I love it. Like when Stephen P just has a new video out where he asks people kind of like ask me to submit a thing, but he asked like a dozen people to submit what fish keeping meant to them. And like things like that, you know, then I'll see like, oh, I forgot about so-and-so or, you know, whatnot. And so, but in the spirit of you being better at that than me, I think tonight I wanted to just kind of work you and I tag team and just chat with folks. And like, if we can maybe help some troubleshooting, or if anybody has any thoughts or ideas or questions, you know, sometimes like, you know, my channel can be very dry and structured if I have something that I'm really obsessed about that week. Like, you know, like the fit that, like, I spent like 3 weeks on the fact that the X and Y chromosome are not linked to sex in fish, when they found out that research, and that, you know, betas, and I went on this like tangent about like everything I could find out about it, and probably was the worst host you could be of a live stream. And so I realized that you have to be in the mood for those, and you have to be in the mood for these too. But yeah. I think we got a manageable sized crowd and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, we've got all our friends here. Like, I can run through and name everybody. That would just take up a bunch of time, but I hope everybody knows that we know who you are for the most part. I mean, there's like 1 or 2 names that are like people who are hanging out with all of us anyways all the time. So, and welcome if you are those few folks who are in here. Feel right at home and feel free to participate. So, I mean, anything on your mind lately about fish keeping, or any interesting situations or anything that have come up lately?
So I am in the middle of having to move a bunch of things. I did a dumb thing, and I knew better than to do it. I've got a 75-gallon double stack right here just off to my left. It's one of those that you would see in a local fish store, which is in fact where I got it from. That's got like the black plastic sliding doors on it, and it sits on the metal frame.
Yeah.
And I've always supported under the feet of that because it sits on 4 round metal feet. And when I was moving it, I don't remember exactly what all I moved that day, but I know it had been like 2 days of moving tanks around and setting things up. I didn't put any reinforcements under the feet of that. So I've got one of those that's sinking into the floor now. I'm in a mobile home, for anybody that doesn't know. I don't have a concrete slab that all my tanks are on. And in doing that dumb thing that I know not to do, I set myself up for some failure in the floor here. So I'm having to move around over a dozen tanks and kind of adjust fish to different places. It kind of reset all of the fish room areas, all the different rooms, because I've got rooms from
you're gonna spread it out there.
Yeah.
My old apartment was that way, actually. You know.
Yeah, you know, so that's the big thing that's going on aquarium wise, is trying to examine the best way to do things. I do have some hopes for the first half of 2022 to consolidate everything into one room. I've been downsizing over the past year or so anyways. At one point I was up to almost 100 tanks. I had over 90 aquariums.
Holy cow.
Yeah, in a single wide. So it can be done. But I'm trying to get everything focused, and I want to take my buddy Ed's approach and kind of plan everything out beforehand, because it wasn't initially intended to be this. It was one of those
fish hoarding. Come on.
I got into the hobby, and I'm one of those people that if it's especially something I'm passionate about, I absolutely go head over heels with it.
Yeah.
And then you know, I think
a lot of us are that way with this.
Yeah, she loves fish too, so cool. She loves different fish. Like, she's an African cichlids person. They're beautiful, but I've never had great luck. So it ended up with a lot of, well, we'll set you up this tank. She loves axolotl, so she's got her axolotl tanks. So that versus having that companion that kind of sets that point of, okay, this is baby getting to be a little more than we should do.
Right. Yeah.
It's that cheerleader, that person that's helping doing the water changes. That's like, well, this is manageable. If I had 50 tanks while I was working 70 hours a week, I can have 80 tanks while I'm not working 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of that. And I could go off forever on a tangent on that, but that's kind of where I'm at now, is moving a lot of things around. And then the content creation plays into that. It's like, well, what do I film? What do I not film? If I'm going to film this, it's probably going to add 6 hours just to the process of doing it, you know?
Yeah, it sucks. When I moved, I was like, everyone's like, film how you move each type of tank. And I was like, that's never going to happen, because, you know, I filmed 1 or 2 and it took double the time. And you're already like, gotta hurry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got to get these fish moved. I've got to get these plants put back in, So
Yeah.
that always factors into my mind. I'm like, I should film that. I'm like, yeah, but I really should just do it and get it done. And if I can film it, great. And if not, then just at least get it done.
Right on. Well, I just realized that I wanted to also say something. As I see Rico Stan is here, Rico's in the audience, and Fishmas giveaways starts tomorrow. And so for folks who know about that, well, you know about it. But for those who don't, that's another community slash, fish family community builder. And we have some incredibly generous people in the community, plus some really kind, corporate, I guess if you want to call them that, but they're pretty much all, well, mostly all family or, independent fish stores and things, aquarium co-op and whatnot, that have donated a really generous amount. And basically Rico and I joked about it in passing. I said he should be Fish Santa, and he took that way too far, like he should have. Thank you, Rico. And now we have like several $100s to give away in like 40 different channel streams. So from now until really the end of the year after Christmas, watch live streams, because there's a chance that you're going to win like almost 10 grand in gift cards and prizes and things. So I mean, it might be even beyond that now, and it can still change. So but it's big. It's amazing that it was pulled together so quickly. So very cool though.
And a huge shout out to Rico Stan. I know he's wanting to kind of keep his name separate from it and just have it labeled as the Fish Fam Christmas, but the amount of organization that went into this, it also, even just in the pre-thought of not having to do the afterthought, I guess, it's set up to where if you're not in the U.S. and you win something that can't go outside the U.S., we've got a way to financially substitute on a lot of stuff.
That's so
I thought
cool.
that was very smart to be able to include a lot of the people that aren't in the United States, because a lot of times that's what it's limited to. So just the amount of detail and planning that went into it is amazing as a community builder, like you said. We're going to have Santa Claus on my channel sometime between now and the end of the event. On one of the live streams, he'll show up. We're going to be giving away a couple $100 in gift cards.
Same here. Yeah.
So it's going to be really, really fun. And I can't say enough nice things about Rico Stan. He's in addition to, if you will, the Fish Room Fever family of channels, which wasn't even meant to be a thing just yet. That was kind of a down the road forward thinking. Rico's such an awesome guy. I was like, yeah, come on in, man. Come be part of the team.
Right on. Well, also I see we've got a Canadian viewer. Hey, a fish riding a motorcycle. Love it. I don't know how that would look. I'm trying to picture it. It's got to be a veil-tail goldfish, I guess, or a long fish of some sort, maybe. But says, hello, I'm working on a video about aquarium burnout. Any tips? No, I'm sick of talking about aquarium burnout. Next. No, it's been covered. So if you Google it, there's a few things on it. I was featured on Aquarium Guys podcast. We did a whole 2-hour show on that. And then also Bentley Pasco, I know, has done an hour and a half or so on that. I've done a show on it.
We did a live stream about aquariums and mental health, and burnout played into that because the hobby. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did yours get demonetized?
I don't know if it did or not.
They demonetize anything when I start talking about anxiety or smashing, or it's just crazy. It's I don't know why, but it's really unfortunate, honestly. I don't care about the money part of the demonetizing. Like, you barely make anything from that, but it's more about the fact that then it doesn't get spread. It doesn't get recommended to other viewers. That's the bummer. So I'm sorry to cut you off though, but.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to say, I feel like that has a huge impact on burnout, because while a lot of people do come to this hobby and enjoy this hobby for the positives in terms of helping with mental health, you can get to the point to where you've got too much. And then if you're somebody that I've got fish tanks to help with my depression, and now I've got way too many to deal with, it can worsen it. So there is that finding your own personal fine line.
Yeah.
And we talked about how a lot of people say, well, you know, I only have 5 tanks, or I only have 2 tanks. And I feel like if we could condition people to leave that only out of there, because it kind of is like, well, it's not enough. I only have 5 tanks. I don't know if I'm worthy of being here. It's like you know, if you've got 1 tank and that's the happy place in your life, there's no shame to that. You know, that 1 tank is not an only. That is exactly where you should be at.
No, I totally agree. That's a super good point too. Because I mean, I may have 30 tanks or 20 tanks at a given time, but I really am not loving all of them. I'm going to be honest. I mean, a lot of them are just grow out tanks or kind of like, oh, that fish got too big, so I better put it in a different tank. And, you know, these are middle-aged and I'm going to sell them in a month or in 2 months. And, you know, I just need to put them somewhere. So if you start selling fish for profit, it's real easy to, or even just to break even, not for profit really. But the burnout, like you were saying, I got burnout on breeding for profit. You know, a lot of channels and guides for breeding things are kind of laid out with that in mind. Yeah. And I feel like I need to make a video. In fact, maybe I will. That's like breeding for happiness or whatever, you know, because they're all like breeding to make $5,000 in a month, or I made 50 grand off discus, or I made, you know, 100,000 in a year off angelfish. But it can get hectic when you start doing that, and when money's involved, and yeah, or if you fall short, or if, you know, a pandemic happens or whatever it may be. Or if your health is compromised. And I think that for me, I like diverse nano tanks generally, and that are heavily planted, but that allows me to have 5 to up to as many as I've had as many as like 15 species in like a 40 breeder or 55 of nano species. And that tank is like the one that I pamper, the one that I'm always watching. While the other ones, I happen to, on the channel, try to preach, you know, set your tank up so that in theory, unless it's a specialty fish, it would be okay if your filter died right now, that it would be okay for a couple days, you know. And for me, that's how I eliminated a lot of that burnout pressure, or that the negative stress, you know. Eustress versus stress. Eustress is like the good kind of stress that gets you to do things, and it builds up in your body, like, you know, oh, we're about to lose the game, but if we can make one more goal and we all work really hard, you know, then we're gonna win. Like, it's that extra push that your body can give you and your mind can give you. But then there's just bad stress too, and I think that knowing the difference of what you get out of which element of the hobby can help a lot. You know, if you find yourself getting too wrapped up in something and thinking this is no fun, I'm doing water changes every 2 days for 2 hours, and you hate that, then why do it? Now, if you're like a bodybuilder or something and you want to do as many water changes as possible, or maybe you just love, I don't know, carrying buckets, whatever it is, then you know, set it up differently. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it. But yeah, let's see what else is going on in the chat. But thank you for the question. And let me say, we've got everybody chatting. So if you have a question tonight, if you could use @TheSecretHistory or even @Alex, I usually will catch if I'm looking in the chat. But it's just been kind of flying tonight because y'all are friends and hanging out, which is great. So continue to chat amongst yourself. But if you have any new, fresh questions, feel free to repeat yourself. Don't worry. I don't have any mods that are going to be like, you're spamming, you know, unless you're saying like, check out my hot nudes in all caps or something like 18 times in a row. You're not going to get bounced from my channel probably.
Well, I only spam that once because that's actually how I supplement my income.
It's
after dark. So no.
Yeah. Oh, I see some hot nudes right behind you, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's see here. Let's looking through the chat real quick, but we've got a pretty diverse crowd in here tonight. I like to see this.
We do.
Yeah, Adam, Keith, Melvin, House in the Valley, Fish Tropic, Dee Dee, hey Dee Dee, Christina, Blue Ice Aquatics, Chevy Fish. Thank you, Mary and Chevy, and for being moderators and being awesome, as well as Patrick. And let's see here. And by the way, Mary Page, your video was awesome. I won't go into it right now, but I just have to say that I know so many people. If you guys haven't seen Stephen P's collaborative video, Mary's story is very similar to my own in a lot of ways, and you can find that video where I spill my guts about what a terrible junkie I was, but you know, or whatever, what a screw up I was. But the hobby really has helped, and so I think there are a lot of people who have had another life and they've moved on past that, and the hobby is structure for them. It is something productive. It is something that's empathetic and more than just keeping busy. It's like it interacts with your heart and your soul too, if you're doing it right. Not that there's a right way, but let's see here. So yeah, if anybody has questions or thoughts, you know, people can also be like, hey, did you see that so-and-so is not playing Aquashella anymore? What's with that? You know, whatever. News in the hobby, news in the fish fam is always good to chat about too. Are you planning on going to Aquashella in?
So I'm going to try. We've actually got an event here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that I'm working on. It's AQUATICon. It's April 30th, and so with me being part of the making that happen team, the planning team, I'm hopeful to get down to Florida, but it depends on how much of a crunch we're in at the last minute, and what things are looking like there. You know, if I'm going to be busy every day with, you know, organizing and calling and editing and filming and trying to do things for AQUATICon here, I'm not going to blow that off just so I can go, you know, have a good time at Aquashell as much as I love to be there. I hope to be there. And I think we're so on top of everything on a daily basis that there won't be anything crazy going on. So I should be able to get down there. But if nothing else, I'm sure I'll make one of the other ones this year. For sure. Yeah, I keep saying I'm going to go to Aquashella. I've been to Aquatic Experience, but I've never been to Aquashella. And that was, what, 2016 or 17? Mm-hmm. And so nobody really knew my channel either. I mean, and I have to say, there's a big difference now between a 1 to 2,000 subscriber channel right now versus 5 years ago. There wasn't a tight-knit community. It's been people like you and Rico, and I mean, so many of you that are on here, Bob Kaler, I know too, and Mary and Chevy Fish, like people who are moderating for multiple channels and introducing people to one another, and then Facebook groups and all sorts of things like that. We really have gotten it to be like an extended family with kind of little niches and subcultures within it. But absolutely. I mean, it's almost like a graduating class of fish hobbyists or something, like each wave, because I have a whole group of people that were following the channel, my first maybe 5,000 folks, that really aren't that plugged in, most of them, to any of what's going on now. And it's kind of a bummer. It's just they weren't used to it, and that's not how they entered the YouTube scene. They entered it just to get like 1 or 2 advice videos and then get off the computer, you know. And I feel like here we've kind of built, there's channels like Rico's, for instance, where it's not necessarily even about the fish. It's like that we're the community and right. We share something in common. Now I see a question from Keith. Keith Hanshaw says, do you have a plant light recommendation for a 20 long?
I'm wanting something similar to the 3.0. Well, my recommendation would be to get the 3.0. Sorry to be a wise guy, but no, I mean, that's honestly my very favorite light for, if I could put it on every tank, I would. To me, it's still expensive, quote unquote. But it's not, it's in the scheme of the hobby, it is not a high-end light. It is very middle of the road. But it performs at the upper end of middle of the road. So, and all the conveniences built in. You don't need to buy a timer. I mean, you can set the brightness and the color tones and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, to me, that's important. If you like aquascaping and plants or flowering, you know, Anubias or Bruce, those things are really important to have a timer and to have the light spectrum shifting with the red increasing for flowering and the blues for the vegetative. So if you don't get that, I mean, the other one that I personally have kind of found nice too would be like the Aqua Sky. It's not nearly as powerful with light, but you do still have some of those control function features, which is nice. And then the Higer, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a Higer that also has timers and a few different lighting options built in. But what about you? Do you have any others that you'd add to that list?
No, well, I think those are all great. But also understand that I very much approach the hobby from a budget-oriented perspective and a DIY perspective and things of that nature. So I have used a lot of the generic, like Amazon type lights, the
Sure.
Aquaneats and things like that. And one thing I have found, to go back to what you were saying and tie in, is that you can use those lights successfully if you incorporate a timer with them.
Yeah.
So I've used the manual timers for forever. Buddy of mine, Chattanooga Ed, he gave me some Wi-Fi plugs for my birthday or Christmas, something. And I've absolutely fallen in love with those things because I can set a schedule on my phone to where I can bring those lights on and off. Like a lot of mine, I'll do dual 4-hour windows of light versus having them on for 7-8 hours at once. So I'll have a 4-hour window in the morning and a 4-hour window at night that I've got them on, which are times that I'm typically interacting with them. And I can do all that from my phone, so I don't have to click a bunch of little buttons. I can turn the lights off and on from anywhere that I've got service on my phone. I don't have to be on my Wi-Fi to do it, so I love that. And that has opened up a lot of things for me in the fish room, not just in lighting, but even in pumps and things like that. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And to go on that note, I mean, it's a little unrelated, but it ties in. The moisture detectors are pretty handy too. They're like 30 or 40 bucks for a good one. You know, it was J-Rad, Iron Man, that's his handle on here. He got me one for Christmas 2 years ago, last year, whatever it was, 2 years ago. And that thing, man, it's handy. If water hits the floor, it's like boom, text to your phone and loud noise in the room. And I mean, because that's something when I was renting, especially, I was really concerned about. Maybe I should be more concerned now that I own the house, honestly. But you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself when you do something dumb to your own stuff.
Yeah, you've got a different comfort level.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I was going to say, yeah, along that same line. So a thing that a lot of people don't realize about lights, you figure out by tracing, and this works with any product, look and find out who the manufacturer is and who the importer is. If you can find those bits of info and then trace it back to the factory, it's really interesting how you can find out, like, oh, you know, the same LED or LCD, for instance, screen that these Apple iPods were using are the same that are in the Samsung whatever. And when you find that out, you find out that there are only, I mean, there's like 20 or 30, but there's really only 5 or 6 quality aquarium light diode manufacturers. And those diodes just have different chipsets and different hardware attached to them. But Cree LED, CREE LEDs CanSun, CANSUN, those two amongst others, I mean, are the ones that are, I think the Cree is actually the same as the Fluval uses, but they're, I mean, you can get spotlights on Amazon that have 40 of those white diodes at 6500 Kelvin, and they're like, I don't know, 5,000 lumens or something ridiculous. Like, yeah, you'll burn your tank if you don't turn it down a little bit. But those were running 2 for $25 for a while, and I had those mounted on the deep bow front 40-gallon that's like 2.5 feet deep, and I could literally carpet stuff at the bottom with house floodlights. So it doesn't work for all plants. It doesn't work for all fish or situations. But if you know what you're doing, you do a little bit of research, then it can definitely, yeah, definitely you can take advantage of those off brands, because they're not really an off brand. In a lot of cases, it's the name brands are using off brand stuff and just marking it up. Melvin's Reef says, so James, do you keep any African cichlids, Lake Tanganyikan fish like Shelley's, I think it's Juliochromis, but unless there's a Judiochromis that I don't know about, lemons, leppy, black, calvis, frontosas, any of that kind of stuff?
So at this point, I don't have a lot of that. Mrs. Fever was really the big African cichlid person, and she got hurt a little over a year ago, so she hasn't really been able to tend to tanks and enjoy the tanks nearly as much. I do have the Neolamprologus multifasciatus shell dwellers, the multis, and I have just a couple of what I call random African cichlids that, again, I couldn't even tell you exactly what they are, because that's just not my, not that I have a specialty, but that's a part of the hobby I don't really have a lot of knowledge invested in, if you will. But I've got a couple of random Africans over here in this tank next to me, which is 125. That also, a lot of my tanks, for anybody that doesn't know me, have the do not mix combinations and things that I don't recommend for beginners. So like, there's a green terror, there's a couple of Africans. There are some Bishers in here along with the Jack Dempsey. Not a recommended tank mate list for your beginner hobbyist, but again, that's something that I know you're well aware of as you progress in the hobby and you spend years doing it. You get a feel not just for fish species, but also individual fish personalities within those species, and know what you can do with those fish and what's safe for those fish.
I've got the most bizarre combo right now that's working, and I'm really just I'm throwing matches at like a puddle of gasoline at this point. But it's so a pair that I got from Kenny and Danny down in Portland when I was there speaking last. I got these. No, it was before I was speaking, because they're like 6 months old now when they had babies. But they're the beautiful Turkana jewel cichlids, and they're so mean. Like, I couldn't keep them with any other species when I first got them. So then 2 of them paired off. They turned on all the other 4 in the tank and cornered them behind the filter. And that was where the other 4 stayed for 3 days, like until I moved them, realizing like, wow, they're really like pinned down by these 2 fish. And I moved the 2 parents rather than the other ones. And I moved them in with about 15 Goodeids, and this isn't a 20 long, with 2 Turkana jewel cichlids that were paired. So they were doing their own obsessive mating thing, and I'd just taken their babies. So they'd already mated once, but now they're in the mood. So they're focused on that. And then I've got the 5 pea puffers in there. And then I've got 4 female Praecox dwarf neon rainbow fish, and 1 male with the 4 females. But everybody's like in perfect homeostasis. Everybody looks at each other and is like, you want to start something? No? Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep going. So yeah, but not that I recommend that combo to anyone. And I know the Turkanas need to be moved quickly. It's just tempting fate at this point. But so far, like, there's not even fins nipped. So sometimes that's some of the magic though of when you keep fish long enough, you start to, I don't know, get a little adventurous with those choices. But for me, you know, it is about fish well-being. So if they're stressed and they're not colorful and whatnot, then I don't like it. But sometimes mean fish just kind of go well with other mean fish. They kind of, and a lot of it has to do with how many of their own kind are there too. Like a lot of species, like peacock gudgeons, for instance, if they're alone or in a pair and they're not a pair, if there's just two, they may very well hunt down every cherry shrimp in your tank and kill, you know, every little teeny nano fish and fry in your tank. But if you have 3, 4, 5 of them, they may just stick with each other and not even pay any attention to the other critters. So it's kind of different with every fish, and you have to kind of learn that. So we got another question. Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I was just going to add on to your, you know, sometimes a mean fish need mean fish. I think the perfect example of that is piranha. You know, those are fish that things could go instantly wrong if they wanted to. And if you put them with another fish, they would destroy it. But because they all know that they have somewhat equal capabilities of assured mutual destruction, they leave each other alone for the most part.
That's totally true. Yeah. I like the mad analogy. Yeah, it's like Star Wars and Reagan in the 80s. If you remember how all that was supposed to go, it's how a piranha tank works.
Yeah,
we all die if anything goes wrong here.
Yep.
Blue Ice Aquatics says, Alex, do you think the hobby has grown more in the last 2 years, or an incline of people leaving the hobby because of circumstance? Oh, so yeah. So like, do I think overall more people like left the hobby because of money and not being on Earth anymore and that kind of stuff? Well, I think a lot of people re-entered the hobby for one, and they were able to Google it, which they weren't able to do 20 years ago. I've seen a lot of that. And that's great because now they're able to jump in without, I mean, when I was a kid, and not that I'm old or anything, you know, but when I was a kid, you had to go to the library. You by my teenage years, you could go to like Encarta or download or have the CD-ROMs or something if you bought them on like Windows 95 or whatever, Windows 98. But the internet wasn't that great of a source unless you knew somebody who ran a forum and you knew the email address and you knew them. I mean, there weren't even really search engines to index who was a good source of that stuff until later on. And so now there's a lot of people who haven't kept since before that period, and they're back. And I think those people are going to be delighted and have been to see what's changed and how easy things have gotten if you want them to be and you do a little research. So I think there's that, but I also think that, you know, I've read a lot of different things in marketing research and where it says that your average fish keeper keeps a tank for 9 months. That's the average. And that average is thrown off by the 5 people who get a tank for 5 months and give up because they got it for their kids or they weren't that interested, but they thought they'd buy a cool fish or whatever. And then, you know, they say it's less than 10% of people who buy a fish tank will stick with it for 2 years or more. And so I think a lot of people have jumped in. I've already seen a little bit of a drop-off view-wise. I've heard from friends that there's been kind of when things opened up, people kind of pieced out again for a minute.
Yep.
And it was noticeable. Like both times there were major waves, people kind of came back online a bit more. It was noticeable. But I think that only stacks up in huge numbers that you really see that trend. And so the bottom line is I don't know, and I don't know if YouTube is indicative of the hobby at large, because I still meet a lot of people who are like, oh, I keep fish. And I'm like, do you go to any fish clubs? And they're like, no. And, you know, are you on YouTube at all or Facebook? No. So there are a lot of pretty reclusive or introverted fish keepers still. And I think it does tend to draw in those people. So that user base is hard to know for sure what's been going on. I don't know, James, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, to add to that, I've got a very specific example that just happened a little bit earlier today. Even people that do go on YouTube for other things don't necessarily, I guess, register in their brains that they could go check for aquarium related stuff.
Yeah.
I had a channel that kind of did a feature on me that's not aquarium related at all. It's about like fossil hunting and panning for gold and stuff. They did a video on me earlier today, and in their comments, somebody was like, well, this is great. I've been looking for other people in aquariums. I love aquariums. I didn't know there was this aspect of YouTube. So I thought that was really funny that, you know, there's somebody that is a YouTube user. They're engaging with content on YouTube, yet they didn't have that correlation of, I should go see if there are other people in this other hobby that I'm into on here. So I've always been, for me, trying to find the balance between where does it just come off as self-promotion and where's that line of I'm doing a greater good by letting people know that, hey, even if you don't come check out my channel, at least go on YouTube and find some other people that maybe you do engage with, and become a part of that community. So that's always been a big thing for me, because there's, like you said, the YouTube aspect of fish keeping is still, even though it's grown massively in the past 10 years, is still kind of off to the side, not nearly what it could be, I think, if more people realized it was there to engage with.
Yeah, well, and you look at countries like Germany or Hong Kong or Singapore, where, I mean, over Singapore, over half of households have an aquarium, or maybe it's have owned an aquarium. But I saw that when I saw some article on who keeps the most fish. It makes sense. They sell the most fish per capita too, and just flat out, they sell some of the most fish. But, I mean, the other thing that I think has really helped the hobby is when I got out of fish keeping, and when I say out of it, I mean, I had like 1 or 2 tanks, and I wasn't keeping up with the newest thing, wasn't trying to collect fish. I literally had, you know, some neon tetras and some angelfish, or a few guppy lines that were important to me, that I just kind of kept up. And not a whole lot of plants. 7 years ago is when I got back into plants, and I got into aquascaping and all that. And that's when my whole world was like, you know, really rocked, and really I got sucked in harder than ever, because I'm one of those people who's, you know, jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, where, like you said, I mean, you kind of were talking about that other channel too, but I've done so many, I've been a part of, you know, aquatic art galleries, fine art galleries. I've been a part of illustrating. I did a coloring book series. I was into live music, and then poetry, and then, you know, like just all these different things. It's usually been either art or nature related, or like crafting, woodworking, stuff like that, jewelry making, glass blowing, stuff like that. But fish keeping is really one thing that kind of incorporates so many, the left and right brain, depending on how you approach it, that you can just, especially once you include plants and an ecosystem being an aspect, and then you learn about CO2 and the chemistry side of things too. I mean, you really fully engage with the both personality types that reside within me. And now with YouTube and things like that, it also allows me to be the introvert and the extrovert. Like, I still spend my time, you know, and when I was using substances, alcohol was really probably my biggest problem per se. But for a long time, I couldn't go socialize without it. And I was the life of the party in college, you know. Everyone still calls me up and thinks that I'm going to be that way. And it's been 15 years since I've had it. Well, 14 years since I've got drunk. And, you know, for me, when I didn't have that, I didn't want to go to concerts. I didn't want to go to parties. I felt totally like, why am I at this place surrounded by all these people, you know? And so for me, fish keeping was like great, you know? And I've kind of kept some of that and then also rebounded a little bit. So now there's kind of a happy medium. But yeah, I think the hobby now is opening up to different kinds of people, because also you get people like, for instance, my wife. She's a really outgoing person. She's not into fish per se, but now she's associated with the fish hobby because of me. And so she knows some of my friends' wives who aren't necessarily obsessed with the hobby, but they know enough about the parts they like of it that they talk about it when we're doing stuff and whatnot. And so there's different groups and facets that are like, you can get your toe wet or you can jump in head first and, you know, go off Niagara Falls in a barrel if you want to get into it. But yeah, absolutely.
You can catch the fever.
Father Fish is here and he says, you guys need to move into Tanganyika's amazing fish. I have some Tanganyikan fish right now, just a couple though. But I do agree, they're cool fish. But my water has a TDS of 7 to 30. So I have to work hard to get them happy in my water. I mean, it's not that hard. It's just additives and things. But they just don't seem to love our water out here. There are some really cool Tanganyikans, though.
Absolutely.
I've been more into the Central African Nanacara, Ivancara, Nanochromis, Pelvicochromis. You know, it started with cribs. And then now, you know, there's this whole world of other fish. And there's also some New World fish too. But like all the Apistos, for instance. But there's a lot of cichlids that don't need crazy water conditions. You know, they live in neutral water. They don't need like, you know, they're not like, or for instance, like rams can be pretty sensitive. And there's other versions of fish that are similar that are less touchy. All right, I'm going to jump again. So sorry if I didn't see your question, guys. But the other thing that happens on these lives is people fall off anyways. Like people come and go, and that's totally fine. But you answer a question, and it's like you're talking to someone who left. So just ask your question again if we missed it. If you see any question, James, please feel free to grab it too. I'm just scrolling through here right now.
I've just been kind of watching. There's a lot of good conversation going on.
There is.
To take a second to just appreciate the fact that, you know, in terms of hobby progression, there are about 100 of us sitting here all over the world, hanging out, talking about fish, communicating, sharing our love and passion for the hobby. And just that fact in and of itself that we're able to do that amazes me. And I think it's one of those things, kind of like a light switch. We take it for granted. We don't realize how phenomenal it is that we can flip a switch and have a light come on. And the same thing with this right here. So
no, I totally agree. And I mean, we've seen over the last 3 years. I mean, it's happened for the last decade, but really the last 3 years, we've seen things too, where someone's house burns down and everyone gives $1 or something, and boom, there's like $40,000 raised or something crazy. You know, there's just been a lot of really incredible stuff that's gone on here, and I hope we can continue to foster that. Oh wow, Rita R. Just want to say hi. I'm a very new fish owner. I have a 40-gallon with plecos, bettas, African frogs. I'm assuming the African dwarf diving frogs, probably not the clawed frogs. They'd probably eat things. And mollies. So far, so good. I'm just looking to learn. Well, Rita, welcome so much. Thank you so much. Your super chat was very, very kind. And I mean, yeah, you're in the right place. If you have any questions, I try to answer every comment that I can, which is most of them usually. And, you know, I told people on my channel when I shifted gears about a year ago and said, this is going to be my primary job rather than graphic design and art being my main job and this kind of a side hustle or job. And right now I'm still kind of on that area where like couldn't support myself doing this, but with my wife helping and with still doing some side projects, I can do it. But now that I've been able to do that with the support of this incredible community, I am able to answer questions and comments at 4 in the morning when you drop them on my page or on the latest video. So if you're ever having trouble, please just drop by. And I mean, the same for everyone. We also have really great answers in the community now. I feel like more and more you would get 40 different answers back in the day of what to do when something would go wrong. And now at least there's a consensus with a lot of things, not all things, but a lot of things where the science is in, you know, the verdict is in that there's certain things you don't want to do and there's certain things you do want to do. But within that, there's still a wide spectrum. But there are, I mean, it is a little more black and white in some ways than when it was word of mouth and so hard to know if you had some obscure fish or obscure problem, you know? So yeah, definitely.
Well, and I think like you mentioned, there are a lot more available places to go for specifics. So now you can look at, okay, I have this type of water. I can find these people that have this type of water, kind of base what I'm doing off of that. Versus going, well, I'm having this problem and the only person I talk to has a completely different type of water and doesn't even keep these fish. It's a lot easier to go and find the specifics and say, well, this is what I've got going in my house, and this is approximately what they've got going in their house. So let me try this method versus, hey, there's, you know, I've got really high pH and the information from the guy with really low pH is wonderful, but it's not really applicable to some of the problems I have.
Yeah. Holy smokes. Alexander, me, thank you, me. Wow. I mean, you've been so incredibly supportive of this channel, and I know others that I also look up to, you know, Dan's Fish and stuff too. Thank you, buddy. I really do appreciate it. And I said it before and I'll say it again. You have the talk we had, and the talk we had prepared me for a talk when someone offered me 20 grand to basically try to leverage branding on YouTube, basically, and wanting a future cut of it or something. And I realized I didn't want to do that. I wanted to build either a nonprofit or an educational resource. And that allows me to do that. I mean, really, in all the 199 subscribers, that adds up to the majority of my money. And I didn't want people to have to pay $5, $10, but literally $1.99 means the world to me if you watch all my videos, if you need help frequently or whatnot. And I'll try to get to as many of you as I can. But I mean, when we get someone who drops a Benjamin like that, I mean, it really does go a really long way for my life, you know.
Yeah.
I've got back surgery coming up, and so I will be out of commission in January, scheduled for January 27th. But I have spine surgery, and they're also going to be messing with the nerves, my sciatic nerve, and a few others. So it is a little touchy surgery, and the recovery could be a little long. I don't know yet. We'll see how it goes. But I mean, it has been on my mind. Like I need to, like I'm trying to store up some content now, and it's stuff like that that lets me spend an extra, you know, 10 hours of the week on researching something. So I mean, thank you so much. And that's really my approach. And it's I don't know if it's a lot of other channels' approaches, just because it doesn't get views always the best. It's not a good profit model. Let's throw it that way. And so when somebody does appreciate it, you're like I wish I could give you the embroidered tote bag from Channel 9. Like I feel like the public access or PBS, you know, pledge drive guys, like you just got the tote bag with the DVDs and the cassette tapes of the American Folk Treasury Tradition 8-track set. Thank you so much. No. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Crown Tail Half Moon says, could mods drop donation fundraiser link that Super Cichlids is doing on behalf of Anna, who lost her mom? The 20th is the drawing for the discus raffle from Han USA. Yeah, feel free. I don't know anything about that, but I mean, I have no opposition to that. And I trust that the mods can figure it out, if you know, or know what's up, or can make sure that it's not some Nigerian bank account that says like, you know, the queen of some made up place. No, I'm sure it's legit. So
there's always that chance. There was that one legitimate Nigerian prince that was found dead with millions of dollars in the room. So maybe he was actually trying to give it to somebody.
That was him the whole time. That was all those phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. My water source template. My water source is template assisted crystallization. Do you know anything about this? Those are foreign words to me. I'm sorry, I don't. So maybe someone in the chat can help you out. Sorry about that though. House in the Valley. Let's see here. Yeah, Visine for real. Dario K. Hey, I feel like I haven't seen you in a minute, buddy. So it's good to see you, Dario. Hey, I need some help. I have an Awaze Biomaster 250 thermo that runs for a week, or that runs for a week now. Problem is that it spits air bubbles and it's making infrequent noise. Any tips to combat this? My guess would be that there's something in your impeller, like probably either algae or sludge or crud or something that just got sucked in, maybe mulm, and is causing the magnet not to spin right. I'd pull it out, clean it out with a Q-tip or whatever. Actually, I don't know how the Awazes like actually work, come to think of it, but I'm assuming it's an impeller like that, like a magnetic one.
Yeah, and another thing I always add on is to clean that impeller housing. A lot of people I find don't clean the housing. They pull the impeller, they clean it, and then they put it right back in the dirty housing, and they're like, nope, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And clean the housing as well.
Yeah, I've found too, especially on older tanks, like, because I let my tanks season. We'll call it season. I let a lot of algae and biofilm grow up. But I'll take, like, my thumb over the garden hose or something that has some force to it, and I'll spray that all throughout both parts if I can, you know, or I'll soak it in like hydrogen peroxide for a half hour and then wash it again, stuff like that. I don't know if that'll help, but I hope it does.
Me being the cheap guy in this hobby, there are a lot of awesome cleaning brushes you can get at the dollar store, bottle brushes and all sorts of different things that work great for aquarium stuff. It's cheap. You don't have to worry about spending a lot of money on something you're going to clean crud out of a filter with. So a lot of that stuff on hand that helps. Oh, totally.
It's crazy. I mean, there's some good videos like Blake's Aquatics from Australia. He did a good one, but I think he kind of started the first one that I was aware of. Maybe he didn't start it, but it was like 15 things at the dollar store that you need for the aquarium hobby or whatnot. And I've seen a lot of variation of that since. That was like maybe 2 years ago, the first one I saw. And I thought, oh, that's great, because that is where I get a lot of my weird junk that I use, you know. You got to make do. They don't make things. Everybody likes keeping fish and things differently, and they don't make things just for you most of the time. So you kind of got to figure that out on your own and trial and error. And once you find something that works, we love to hear about it.
Yeah, I've thought about revamping that on my channel, because I started doing that like within a couple weeks of my channel starting, so it of course got like no traction at that point. It was just not the time to do it, but that's really one of the main places I go for a lot of things.
Yeah, and then Alishon, how are you doing, buddy? It says, Alex, would you want a link for a talk by Doc Luzel on genus Hemichromis. It will be on Zoom on Monday. Yes, I would love that. And I will post it in the community tab. Daria, thank you for the €5 chat. I love it. I love seeing the different currencies from around the world. I got, what was it? It was a really weird one the other day. Oh, it was Pakistan. And I was like, I didn't even know they watched us in Pakistan. Lovely. But it makes sense with the British ruling Pakistan at one point. Also, multi-tank addiction. I see your icon. I must have lost your super sticker, but thank you so much. I really appreciate the throwdown there. Yeah. Oh, it's a poop. Thank you. Love the poop. Yep. Gotta have the poop. All right. Let's see here. Wah, wah, wah.
So I did see a question. Somebody was asking why you would spend $10 on plastic plants versus live plants. As somebody that has live plants and everything at this point in my hobby, I wouldn't. But as somebody that also successfully killed a lot of plants for a decade, I can understand that aspect of having attempted it. And plants can be expensive, especially if you're working on a budget, if you will.
If you don't know anybody and you're just going to like a local fish store, yeah, it's rough.
So like, do I want to spend $60 on some plants that I've already killed $300 worth of plants? Or do I want to spend $10 on some plastic stuff I can put in there to at least give some of the hiding breaks and things of that nature, even if it's not going to give the biodiversity?
I've been encouraging people to, and this is up to you, because yes, there is a very, very slight risk that you'll get some sort of parasite or snail or whatever, but go to your local bodies of water and get plants there. I mean, I've gotten some of my favorite plants, a lot of the Ludwigia and Rotalas and Hygrophilas, you know, a lot of them are found in waters all over the U.S. I mean, I'm up in Seattle, so if I can find stuff, unless you're in Alaska, I don't want to hear it. Like anybody south of me can find even cooler stuff. So yeah. All right. Elliot Bacon, hello, welcome. Says, hey guys, I have a 15-gallon long planted tank with 8 panda corridoras. pH is 6.7, low flow. I want fish that will actually come up and be excited about eating instead of hiding when I go to feed. Any ideas? I love that question. I really like that question. So honestly, your corries will be that fish if you feed them at night. It won't necessarily be about the food, but they'll go up and down on the glass. It may be that you have a long tank and they kind of like a deeper tank as far as to do their little diving up and down obsessive thing that they tend to do when they're excited. But doing a big old water change and dropping the temperature about 4 degrees total. So you may do your bucket of water maybe 15 degrees cooler, and just slowly add that, you know, gradually add that in, and it drops the total temperature 4 degrees. We're talking Fahrenheit here. You know, that will trigger corridoras and plecos and a lot of things, especially if they've had time for a few weeks without a big water change. That'll trigger them to be really excited, think that it's starting to rain in their natural habitat, and you'll get more action out of them. The pandas are already a really good species for activity, honestly. And they're a good species for, they can live in 68-degree Fahrenheit water. They are from the foothills of the Andes all the way out into the main basin of the river. But as far as other fish that come up to greet you, you've always got your classic choices of like a betta or a paradise fish or a gourami of some sort. A lot of those are very intelligent. Pea puffers are going to be pretty intelligent. And honestly, pea puffers and corries I haven't seen fight that much. They're kind of occupying different realms. Although if you're new at all, I could understand why you might not want to do that. It's not they're a bit aggressive. But yeah, I mean, so you've got an acidic tank that's low flow. I mean, the other thing that you could do in there would be like a nice school of like the Sunda Danios. They're not going to necessarily know you. They'll come to feed, but you could fit, and don't worry about an inch per gallon or any of that with these. These guys get about an inch long at most, and they're a beautiful blue, and there's a green variety and a red variety too. They're Axelrodi, Danios or Rasboras, depending on where you live. They're marketed differently, but they're the Sunda Danio Axelrodi is their Latin, and they are a really pretty one that you could also have like a mini school of. So that's the other option. If you want something to greet you, kind of, you can also have something that moves around in shoals. Reed tetras, ember tetras, Kubota rasboras, SB rasboras, glow light rasboras. Check some of those out. They won't know you per se, but they are very dynamic and fun to watch while feeding and things, and they'll go and feed heavily if they're not intimidated by anything. I like that question a lot, but James, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
I don't know that you left me anything to add to that. I will say,
sorry, I know I like went off on a tangent there.
I'm huge on ember tetras, but I will say, don't discount those nano fish. They may not have that specific personality of like your betta or whatnot, but I find that all of my fish, once accustomed to me, I can go up and put my finger on the glass, and because they think it's feeding time, they come up and they will do that greeting, kind of like you were mentioning in terms of feeding. Even my, I've got one piranha that's solitary right now because he got torn up pretty bad, so I've got him in a QT tank. I can pick up the fish food bag, and he'll pop out from the back of the tank and come to the front, and then when he sees me put my hand over the top of it, he'll sit there and he'll nip at the surface waiting for me to drop that food in for him. And I just put my finger up there and he'll come out. But you can get most fish, once they feel comfortable with you, like you mentioned, to exhibit some of those characteristics, even if it's not an intellectual, hey, I'm your buddy. They'll go, oh, you mean food. I'm coming to say hi. So
totally. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of, I do rank my fish in intelligence by, I'm just prejudiced. It may not be their intelligence. It may just be that they have not communicated it to me yet that they're intelligent. But I think there are some fish that are pretty dumb. But they're, you know, like silver tip tetras or something like that. They're not the most brilliant or like unique acting fish generally. But, I mean, they will come and swarm your finger if you get a good-sized group of those. Now, I wouldn't choose those for that small of a tank for a 15-gallon. I'd stick with those smaller body ones rather than any of the skirt tetras or stuff like that. But, you know, I've had baddis that will come out. And they're, you know, teeny tiny little scarlet baddis that will come out and greet me when it's food time, especially if you feed live food. You can really elicit a response with live food. So if you have like, you know, either brine shrimp or vinegar eels or something that you give them as a treat, maybe 2 or 3 days a week or something, you can really get a fun to watch experience too. Because some of the time they're just snapping at stuff and chasing things and running into the glass or going under rocks. And, you know, it looks like the scene in Return of the Jedi where they're going through the forest, like on the speeder bikes or something, like when the fish go chasing after some little Daphnia or something and tearing through the plants in your tank. And it's pretty charming, you know, even like Celestial Pearl Danios and stuff like that. There are some that have personality. And yeah, so I like all of those. Let's see here. Yeah, Canasteel Valley Cichlid says, join your local aquarium society, attend swaps and auctions, and you can get loads of plants. That is the best place. Make friends. I mean, honestly, make friends. Or I don't like shipping stuff because it's a pain, honestly, for me. Seattle's kind of far from everything, generally speaking. But I just don't like doing it. Because I don't like letting people down if something dies or if I'm late a day shipping something or whatever. It's just, there's more opportunity for me to upset someone than to make someone happy in a weird way. As a track record, so to speak, goes. So I don't do that as much, but there are a lot of people who do want to trade plants. So that's the other thing. If you're into rare plants or you're into, biotope aquariums of some sort, find a group that's into what you're into, and whether that's fry or plants or snails or shrimp, there are a lot of people who want to swap, and they'll say, I'll give you my strain of X, Y, or Z for your strain of X, Y, or Z, and yeah. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Ead Jamis or Yamas says, help. Only recently, about 2 weeks, my aquarium is rising to 35 degrees Celsius. Oh, geez. And I don't know why. I've changed the heater, but it's still happening. Why would this happen? Flow. That's the only thing I can think of. Always try to put your heater at a angle if you can, not straight up and down, and not completely, well, you can put it completely parallel if you want, but an angle's best. A diagonal to your frame of your aquarium. But definitely 35 is like top of the heating range. And so I would say that, one, you're lucky if you have fish, maybe it's discus or rams, but that can definitely kill fish quickly. But I would say that it's got to be, if you've got a whole new, as long as you didn't go to the store and buy the second, heater that was behind the first one you bought or something, like in a small town, then I would say that your issue, if it's truly the tank, it's got to be a flow and aeration issue. You're not moving enough. Maybe you have too many floating plants, or maybe your lights are giving off heat also too, and the heat is compounding. But the heater has a thermostat and will stop getting hotter at whatever you set it to. So as long as you set it down at 26 Celsius or something, or whatever you want to set it at, it should stop unless it melts down or the coils or the thermostat break, which does happen frequently. So there are defective batches. So I would double check that it's not that. But if it is really something going on in your aquarium, it's got to be that you've got not enough water movement. Your water is staying in one place, getting really, really hot, rising to the top, then spreading out. The cold water is then coming in via convection, and it's heating it up again. But that's awfully high. You must have the setting at like 30 if that's going on. I don't know, James. Any other thoughts on that one?
I mean, that really covers it. One, my first thought would be if you got 2 in a row, it could possibly be some sort of manufacturer malfunction. And then, of course, while I never like to accuse anybody, we always want to look at user error, because that factors into a lot of things.
I've killed a lot of fish accidentally that way.
Yeah. My suggestion would probably be to take, if it was me, I would take that heater and I would turn it all the way down to the lowest possible setting, let that water cool, and then very gradually, incrementally just move it up a little bit and see how my water temperature reacts if I was in that situation.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And if you knew that it was doing fine before that, or with the same heater and it was doing fine, then it very well could be something like that with the heater, or that it has a setting that's like the point of no return because of some glitch or something. Yeah. But really it's probably going to be, if it's anything that's not related to heater somehow, which would surprise me, it's just that your water's not circulating, and it's not able to evaporate. So maybe if you have a lid on the tank, that could be the other part. Take the lid off the tank. I mean, if you're in some hot climate place and it's 90 degrees outside, well, there's your answer. And the only way to cool a tank down, other than throwing ice in it or having a cooler, is evaporative cooling through either aeration or surface agitation. So, which that's all you do. You just agitate it and move the surface water as much as you can, break the surface tension as much as you can, and move that water, and it'll cool it down eventually. Elliot Bacon, another Canadian super chat. Wow, you guys, thank you so much for the super chats tonight. This is quite the holiday spirit. It's very kind of you. They have let's see, I always butcher this one. Brycon Mate at my Tetras, Mate Tetras, I don't know, local fish store, which are similar to the Sundañas. So I might give them a go. They also just got in some tiger batis, which I might think trying out too. Yeah, the tiger batis are a really, really great fish, beautiful fish. Really hard to get a female sometimes, depending on where you live. I don't know how Canada's selection is, but I would guess they're buying it the same place as Americans are, and so it's probably the same thing. There's a lot of fake males in that species, and if you see any red whatsoever in the female, if you think you're buying a female or a trio or something, it's not a female usually. You want to see a little bit of glistening blue and some gray stripes and some silver stripes. That's about, or dark and light gray stripes. That's a better sign that you've got a female. So that's just now they're not the most like deadly fish in the world. They don't have sharp teeth or anything. They just nip. But they are really cool fish, and they can work really well in a peaceful tank in a lot of different situations. It's just they do have the potential to be micro predators against shrimp, or if you have like really teeny fry or something in the tank, that's where they kind of become these ambush predators. But batis are one of my favorite species of all species groups of all of them, in that they are mini cichlids, really, the way they behave. They'll nest and they'll take care of their young about a third to half the time, depending on how your tank's set up. If it's a biotope, they will sometimes even like shuttle their young around for a month or two, I've seen. Other times they go psycho and eat them all as fast as they can. It's not a predictable thing, but they're a really interesting fish nonetheless. So I would really recommend getting those just for the fun of it. Yeah, definitely.
I just want to say a huge thank you real quick while you're looking through the chat there.
Yeah.
Right before the stream started, we actually got my 3,000th subscriber.
Oh, congrats.
In the chat. So a huge thank you to everyone. I've been kind of holding that off towards later in the stream, just so it didn't sound like a plug of sorts. But I did want to really say thank you to everybody. That's
plug
awesome.
Plug it in, brother. Yeah.
So.
No, that's awesome. Congrats, man. That's the hardest part, at least for me, when I with my channel, is like 2 years I didn't even have 1,000 or whatever, you know, and then boom, and it starts getting exponential as that growth goes. But man, getting that snowball to start turning into an avalanche is not easy. This is interesting. Dr. Mazral was writing that in my fish biology course, I had students train fish to do a task. The fish were betta, goldfish, Honduran red points, African leaf fish, and the goldfish was the only one to actually learn. Now, I find that really interesting because being bored working at a fish shop, we taught an Oscar, and we taught a crib. And we also taught an angelfish, all to do different tricks. And there's even a video, what was his name? We named him, and then he got bought. We were all bummed. But we named an Oscar to come up to the top and guess which hand the food was in. And he'd watch like the pouch from across the room to try to, because he'd usually know. And so we figured out he was watching from across the room. But he would do that. And then the other thing we got him to do was we put our hands like this and he'd come up and go through it. I've seen the goldfish jumping through hoops. I think the controls I'd be really interested to hear about in this study, Dr. Mazral, would be, were the students as attached to a Honduran red point as a goldfish? It's such an iconic fish that it's easy to work with a goldfish. Everybody knows goldfish. There's old footage of goldfish learning tricks, so it doesn't feel impossible, and things like that. And so my bettas also, I've trained them to come up to my hand, and same with my paradise fish. They'll come and they'll get in my hand and they'll rub against it. I'm like, please don't do that to your slime coat. But I mean, now I've trained them. I just want them to come up to the surface and kind of interact with me. But now they do that, and they'll go. I'll make a little circle with my finger, and they'll go through that, and then circle around and do it again. And then I also kind of give them a little pat on the head. Both Jackson Fish Stick, who's my my pretty beta male, and then Rose, who's his lovely lady, even though they never have babies. But in any case, yeah, I've taught them to do that too. And then we had an angelfish that would, and I didn't know angelfish could do this. I knew archerfish could do this, but he would take water and he could squirt it a little ways with his mouth. And he would try to do that, and he would squirt it over the edge of the tank. And for a while, I thought he was squirting my wife, because she would sit next to the aquarium. But it turns out the way he was getting her was he was turning really fast right at the edge of the aquarium and flicking his tail. But he would slosh the water out and splash it onto my wife when she was watching, like, whatever, I don't know, Sex in the City or something, like engrossed in watching the show. And she'd just get wet. And so she got into the habit of feeding him to make him stop. And so on my channel, he was a pretty big hit because we caught it on film during some live streams and stuff too. So the thing I would be curious about that, because I'm sure there are fish, you know, smarter than others and more prone to tricks, and maybe that, or maybe goldfish are more domesticated, or maybe they're even, honestly, even dumber. And so they have that wild fight or flight reflex also bred out of them a little bit. I don't know. I'm totally making things up here. But my point being is that I've seen a lot of different fish exhibit trainable or at least learned behavior. And so I'm curious, you know, did you prescribe, like, we've got 2 hours a day that we're allowed to train them and we're all using the same method? Because if so, pretty good study, you know, good enough study, whatever. But I'm just curious now, that because I know you're a professor and I respect what you do. So now I'm just curious about this whole thing, because it may be a better lesson on your students or on our preconceived notions, or who knows? The anthropologist in me, I guess, is flaring up on this study. Let's see here.
See, now I want to go in there with that interactive piranha and see if I can get him to swim through my hands.
Yeah, just train him with raw chicken every day.
Yeah, just
get your fingers right in there, move them a lot. Oh wait, wasn't it you with the piranha?
Oh yeah, I've got the.
Okay,
I don't know if it'll
all right.
On the.
Okay,
yeah.
I happened to be in that live stream. That was like the second live stream of yours that I ever caught.
Yeah, so that was because it happened when I was. So I guess real quick backstory. I started breeding and taking care of piranha a decade ago, so I've had my hands in with them thousands of times, no problem. So the thought was, over on TikTok, I wanted to do a series showing that they're not these vicious man-eaters that everybody thinks they are.
Right. Oh yeah, I should say I didn't watch him get bit. I watched him bleeding and holding his finger afterwards.
Yeah. So the third day of that series is the day I got bit, and that was because I didn't pick up on some breeding behaviors that I should have been paying more attention to. It's one of those, I'm doing something dumb and I'm paying more attention to setting up cameras than I am looking at the behavior of my fish, because as soon as I went back and watched the footage, and I went through it in slow-mo as well, it wasn't even one of the fish that was feeding that bit me. It was a fish that was defending territory that came over, bit me, and then went right back to its territory. So, but yeah, that's how that happened. I'm going to show that this is not as crazy as you think it is. And Murphy said, "Oh, you are you?"
Yeah. The same thing. I had fellow from Oregon, Frank. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of his last name. I'm not gonna even say it. Frank M. Wonderful Frank M. from Oregon. And you can go back and watch the Piranha Expert episode. He got him legalized in Oregon, but he also did a consulting for Penn and Teller's reality, or not reality show, but their one of their TV shows. And they asked him how many piranhas could we put in this glass box and tell the story of piranhas and like, are they really bloodthirsty and yada yada. And he told them how many, and they didn't listen to him. And then they bought extra pacus to make it look like there were more fish in there. And then they had Teller drop into the piranha box, like jump in and startle them, which moved them out of the way, but one nicked him on the foot. And I guess it bled all over and they had to do another take. It didn't get him badly, but it just bled a lot in the water. And that never saw the light of day, I guess. But I thought that was funny because he kind of warned them, don't do X, Y, and Z, and they're pretty predictable fish. And yeah, they didn't eat him alive though. Even with a bleeding toe, him sitting in there a while, they did not start chewing away at his foot. They were all happy, fat, and sassy. Okay, so interesting. Dr. Mazeral says that he did the funny. He just says, I did the same demonstration in an elementary school class, and it bit a big chunk out of my finger. But as far as the fish study that I was asking about, he also commented that they use all the kids training those fish use the same method, trained to do the same task, and that the kids actually thought that the goldfish would be too dumb and would learn the least or wouldn't do it. No, that's really interesting. Interesting, yeah. I wonder now I wonder if my little comment about the fight or flight and domestication of goldfish, or at least inbreeding of goldfish, line breeding of goldfish, has anything to do with that, or the fact that maybe their eyes are, pretty bad in some case. Just the fact that they're not as in tune with all their sensory input, fight or flight systems. Totally making this up off the top of my head, but I'm just curious. Now I have to know. Now I'm going to need a follow-up study, doctor, please. I'm sure we can get you the funding tonight. Everybody, let's all throw in a buck. That'll fund a robust scientific research study, right, guys? All right. Well, how much time do you have to spend here, James? Are you
It's 30 years until my son takes over the empire.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's
whatever you want to do.
Let's do a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So, does anybody have anything pressing? Any fish in danger of losing their lives, or maybe their favored position in your collection if something doesn't change? Can we help you somehow?
While we're waiting for that to roll in, I do want to point out Dragonlair said you couldn't do that with black piranhas. You're absolutely correct. That is something that I would not try with any of the Ceresalmus. I would stick to Pygocentris if you're going to have your hand around a piranha. And it very much also goes into knowing the individual personality of your fish, which I try to preach a lot. Just because you have a fish of one species doesn't mean it's going to interact the same as the same fish of that same species. So.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I have fish that aren't mean fish whatsoever, just angelfish, and I've got some blue lip buffalo head cichlids. That both of those, they just decide to nip my hand over and over and over and over, thinking, I don't know, that they're being a badass or something. But I'm like, don't you know I could just do this and you'd be in trouble? But yeah, it totally depends on the fish and the personality too. That's for sure. Let's see. Big Bud 62 Peltec says, I sure wish I could get my mountain minnows to spawn successfully. Fairly certain I have at least one pair. Any tips you might have? Yeah. So I spawn those frequently. I assume you mean the White Cloud mountain minnows or the Tan's minnow, named after, the Boy Scout in China in the 1930s. That discovered them. And then there's also meteor minnows. So there's three that it could be, but it doesn't really matter which of the three it is. They're all real similar. and it's probably not the third one because that was a more recent discovery in Vietnam and a little more unusual. But those fish, one, you need to have a male and a female. But if you can, try to find those big old bellies. Feed them live food, and they need fairly small live food. So baby brine shrimp will work, but honestly, vinegar eels or Daphnia and Daphnia babies, like a live colony of Daphnia, or white worms or infusoria, just keep that in the water. A lot of people don't realize that when you are trying to prime fish for breeding, yes, you need to fatten up with lipids, omega-3s, omega-6s, vitamins A, D, and E, protein, fat. You need to get the females so that they can produce the ideal egg, and you need to figure out if they're vegetarian, what veggies in their natural habitat provide that, or what supplement you want to feed them. But if they're omnivorous, and those minnows definitely are, / mostly, I think, benthic predatory. Maybe not. I wouldn't consider them benthic, actually. But in any case, they eat a lot of those little micro crustaceans and things. And the adults will like brine shrimp, even full-size brine shrimp, quite a bit. But when you feed your fish, it's actually, you're feeding the parents to set off in their mind, after you've met the physical necessity that they can physically produce eggs out of themselves. You also need to produce the mental readiness of, there is food for my babies in this water. There is something to feed them, because animals know everything in animals, and this is yet again another anthropology bias coming out in me, but everything is a balance between calories used and what's gained. And it doesn't need to be a sentient, super smart creature to do that. Everything's an assessment of that. And so if being too colorful and flashy and doing a mating dance uses more calories than are needed for reproduction, that's where the dancing stops in every species, because natural selection makes it so. Usually, there's some weird quirky cases, but yeah, get them ready with those things. Also, I would use the marble method or the gravel method, which is not the little gravel that you get at the store that's crushed and uniform. It's you want river rocks, like from Home Depot or a home improvement type store, hardware store. And you basically just cover the bottom in about this thick, maybe 2 inches or 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters. You could use round glass marbles. You could use oblong, randomly round rocks. But what you're counting on is spaces for the eggs to fall in between. I almost guarantee you what's happening right now is that they're eating their own fry as soon as they hatch. So what you do is you keep those parents in one tank. You feed them lots of food, get them real fat, and if you really want to get them to spawn like crazy, keep the males and females separate. But you keep them separate, get them fat, and then you put them together into a spawning tank that's set up with no other fish. And depending on what you want to do, you can put shrimp in there. They'll clean the eggs rather than eat them, usually neocaradinas. Monos will eat the eggs, I've learned. And you don't want snails in there either that are going to eat the eggs anyways. You can have some snails in there, but just not a ton. And then lots of plants, lots and lots of plants for them to hide in, for them to feel comfortable, and then some open area. And every morning they will probably drop 5 to 50 eggs in a group if you do like a reverse trio, or I mean a trio, or you could even do 2 males and 3 females, or 4 females, 2 males, whatever you want to do. Just have more females than males, ideally, if you can learn to sex them. And that's true with almost any cyprinid, any characin. I've been able to spawn pretty much everything with those basic steps. And if your water is rotting the eggs, if you do see eggs at some point and they're foggy or fuzzy, throw more almond leaves or something like that in, as long as they can take that within their water parameter regiment that's online with what they're supposed to naturally handle. Because you could use methylene blue, you can use other things, but if you just keep the pH below 7.0 and above 6.0, that's a pretty good spot to actually get rid of most fungal and bacterial rots on eggs that like devastate eggs. You may still lose some, but if you go below 6, you start affecting your biological, your nitrobacillus and your nitrogen cycle in most tanks, and you have to rely on other things. We won't go into that, but so that's my advice. I do have series on breeding tetras, and also have another series or an episode called How to Breed Nanofish Easily, Egg-laying nanofish or egg scatter nanofish easily. That video goes over it all in detail, and I do it with a few from start to finish. If you're interested, check that out. And there's other great. Lucas Bretz has one on how to breed neon tetras that's pretty similar. Any video on how to breed and scatter is fairly similar. There's different quirks, but the general principle's the same. So yeah, did you have, sorry, I really talked a long time there. Did you have anything to add there, buddy?
I don't know that I could add there if I tried. I think you did a phenomenal job in covering that. And as you mentioned out there, are a lot of viable sources on the internet that you can refer to in terms of pulling up videos to get, I guess you could say, even more detail, but you were so thoroughly detailed in that. You did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, no problem. Well, you know, I've been having fun tonight, honestly. I'm really glad we did this, that we got together. And while I respect and enjoy a lot of YouTubers as people and friends, not all of them go about things to a similar kind of way as me in the liking to research and find several ways that are correct, and then try a few out, and then say, I don't know for sure, but this is what worked for me. And, you know, I feel like we're on the same page with a lot of that philosophy of how to proceed in the hobby, and so I really am glad that we were able to get together and do a show tonight.
Absolutely, and that means a lot to me, because I look up and respect you and your methods and the way you approach things. So I appreciate that. This has been a long time in the making. You know, we first started talking about getting together, I guess, almost 2 years ago, year and a half ago. So I'm glad that we were finally able to do it.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And also too, like, I'm glad you didn't just think I was being a jerk. I'm sorry, because it wasn't anything personal whatsoever. It's just life, you know.
I understand. Life happens to all of us, as I like to say.
Yeah, it does quickly. Well, you know, everybody has been great tonight. It looks like viewers are winding down a little bit. I'm guessing Dragon Lair. Yeah. Tip, don't ask Alex unless you want an in-depth answer. Yeah, sorry guys, Tangent City here. Yeah, so I think we're gonna wind it down here. But I really appreciate everybody who is here tonight, all new folks, old folks, middle-aged folks, you know, lurkers, admins, or I guess they're not called admins, mods. Thank you so much for the hard work you do and for helping out. And also, thank you so much to James for helping out. I mean, seriously,
my pleasure.
It was fun to chat. And sorry, I'm always wordy. That's why we have to do a 2-hour episode just to answer a few questions. But
you're fine. I'm typically on your side of things, so I'm sure you're aware of. Poor Ed oftentimes will sit on our live streams, and I'll go off on my tangents, and I'll be like, Ed, and he'll be like, nope, you said everything. And I'm like, okay, sorry.
Right on. Yeah. Well, and yeah, exactly. So, well, if you know, I always like to let my guests have the last word, and because I talk so damn much, but if everybody wants to tune in again on Tuesday coming up, we should be, unless anything pops up and changes. Stuff can change during the holidays, but sounds like Dr. Mazerol will be teaching us how to dissect a live fish. No, I could say that and we get a lot more viewers. uh, with explosives. But no, but thank you so much for the super chats and the members and those of you who've been around, the questions, and those of you answering each other's questions. That's what I love about this community.
Yes.
That's what, I mean, that's why I don't make videos with like sparklers and explosions and bells and whistles that much, is because I love people who are passionate about this hobby and interpersonal connections and fish. And that's why they're here. And they help each other. And so it's also, I haven't, this year it's been odd because Aquatic Arts expanded, but generally they gave me some money to give away in the form of gift cards, or they'd match my money. And I do that to people being kind. And while we can't do it right now for the holidays, just because they just built a warehouse that's 6 times bigger than their old one, and got all new tanks and everything, that is a promise I was told will be fulfilled in the future when I work with them, you know. So we'll do that. We'll continue to do that. If you need that reward, I know most of you don't, but I like to give out $50 and $100 gift cards when I can to people being kind to one another, answering questions for one another, and just saying like, hey, you having a rough time? If somebody's like, yeah, I'm going through it, or I just had X, Y, or Z happen. I really do appreciate the community we have here. It means the world to me. And you're one of those people who builds community and who has, you know, anchored it down, held it down, and built it up in Tennessee and across the world, you know, with the computer. And, you know, I can't believe you're at only 3K. I mean, I don't mean to belittle 3K by any means, but so many people know you and are friends with you and respect your opinion and what you do, that but that's never how popularity goes on the internet. So,
and I don't take offense to that. I want you to know that. A lot of people call me the biggest little YouTuber around.
Yeah, okay.
It falls on me, and I won't go on a tangent, but you know, when the missus got hurt and my mental health issues and having 2 kids, I'm not putting out weekly videos, and that's part of that. It falls on me on not living up to the standard that I should be attaining. So, you know, it is what it is.
Somebody just said, hey, I need a coupon for free shipping. If that's through Aquatic Arts, you shouldn't need a coupon for the free shipping. If you just have dry, if you're just ordering dry stuff, it should be automatic. If it's not, that's weird. Email them. And just don't place your order yet. But they'll keep shipping dry stuff. But the thing is, you might want to order your dry stuff and your live stuff separately, but they're not shipping any fish until January again anyways. Most places aren't right now. So word to the wise, don't order fish unless you think you'll get them the late first or early second week of January at the earliest. And that's just a general rule for the hobby at this point, because we can't rely on the mail service with the holidays. But hopefully it should work with that. And since you don't need the code, then you can also get my 15% off or 10% off if you've already used it. That info is in the description. That's all I'm going to say about that. But let's circle back around to what I was closing on, which is thank you again, James. And you've been a great guest to have. And let's have some last words from you. I'll let you close it out, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. So goodbye, everybody.
So I would like to use my last words again for a community builder. We've got an event. It's a first-year thing, Aquaticon in Knoxville, Tennessee, 2022. I feel like it's in a good area for a lot of people that can't make other events, and it's going to be a lot of community. It's over 16,000 square foot with over 90 vendors, so it's going to be a good size event for people that can't make the Aquashellas, and we would love for you to check it out. So that would be my closing there.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.